So welcome everybody to this special edition of the Pool of Life podcast with the incredible Lar Dooley, keeper of the land at Loughcrew in Westmeath, who died recently. And so this podcast episode is being published posthumously in honour and respect of Lar. So this was a recording from the Summer Solstice, or the day after the Summer Solstice at Loughcrew. I had just finished a pilgrimage where I'd walked from Liverpool, my home city, through into North Wales along the coast to a very special Neolithic site on the island of Anglesey in northwest Wales called Bryn Celli, in time for the rising of sun on the summer solstice for a beautiful ritual. And then from there I wanted to get to Loughcrew to see Lar and to be on the hill at County. But it was also an opportunity to spend some time with Lar. I got to spend the whole weekend with him, which was beautiful, and he agreed for me to interview him, which I am about to share with you now. And I'm sure for a lot of you who are listening to this now, it would be a beautiful experience to hear his voice. And so I present to you the beautiful Lar Dooley. Okay, so I'm fortunate today to be interviewing someone who has been a big influence on me and my life in the last few years, as I've, well, some of you know, returned from New Zealand back to my home city of Liverpool. But it's as part of my wider family constellations, where it involves connected into ancestors and the spirituality of our ancestors, beyond what we experience in the here and now, and how I became connected to Lar Dooley, who I'm going to be interviewing today, who is, for me, a man of wisdom, a man of experience, a keeper of this sacred space here in Meath called Loughcrew, one of my favourite sacred places in Ireland, if not the world. And I'll give some context as to how I find myself here, and then I'll introduce you to the incredible Lar. So when I did my first family constellations training in the north of Ireland in County Down, which is the land of my ancestors, or one of them, one of my fellow trainees, Carrie Hannah, she had a book called Out of the Darkness, and I was intrigued. And the title of the book is A Sacred Journey into the Origins of Indigenous Irish Spirituality. And so naturally I was seeking, and it interested me. But then she opened the book, and me being nosy, I looked over her shoulder, and in the first pages of the book is some paragraphs in Te Reo Māori. And Te Reo Māori is obviously familiar to me from living in New Zealand for many years. And so there was extra intrigue. I was like, okay, well, what is this? Then I asked her more questions. And then she told me about this man called Lar Dooley and this incredible place called Loughcrew in County Meath. And then a couple of weeks after the final module of my training, I was at the television in 2023 for Beltina, and a man there who I knew from Donegal, he said, you need to go to Loughcrew. And he didn't know about my connection to the book. And so it was a sign for me to come, and that's when I saw you out, Lar, and here we are. So without further ado, welcome.
Very much, thank you. It's a pleasure always, man. It's always a pleasure talking to people, but especially people that are focused on benefiting from the old ways and bringing the old ways back. There's a lot of problems with mental health, with people trying to relate to a society they're not attached to, and society, I think, is prepared to allow a certain percentage, like 4 or 5% of people that don't belong in society to exist without interacting with society. but at the same time, these people are hugely affected and they affect other people. And from that point of view, yeah, sacred sites are beautiful. If I can explain Loughcrew in a kind of an overall context, Loughcrew is what's called a tower, and the tower in the Gaelic language translates as a place of eminence on the hilltop. So all over Ireland you will see these hills, and on top of them there will be Neolithic passage chamber cairns, going back 5,500 and 6,000 years into our prehistory, into our pre-written history. And the larger ones, which were identified as Neolithic cemeteries, for, you know, that was how the modern world sees the ancient world. Everything is about dead people, you know. They don't try and engage with, like, how did these people live in the landscape, or how did they live, or, like, I remember putting a comment up one time about how difficult life was in the Neolithic, and people were saying, why was it difficult? Because they had fields, and they had, like, you know, they were relating to the modern landscape as being the same landscape as our ancestors lived in. And of course, they came into primeval forest. They created the landscape, you know what I mean? And all of these ancient tower, be it Ishna, or be it Tara, the hill of Tara, or be it Loughcrew, or be it Carrowkeel or Carrowmore, they all have one thing in common, which is sacred wells. And they're identified in modernism as holy wells, like, because they were sacred spaces before religion came onto the landscape. So religion attached themselves to everything. As you said, everything evolves. So the sacred wells evolved into holy wells and curing wells or whatever. But one of the practices that I was taught, so my uncle brought me into Indigenous spirituality at the age of 12. I'm a survivor, not a victim. I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse and rape. And when I was raped, because my father was a Catholic priest, and he considered me to be the originator of my own abuse, rather than, like, these people were serial predators, like, you know what I mean? I didn't invite this man to come and rape me, like, you know, at 11 years of age. No idea what sex was, never mind rape or anything else.
Yeah.
But I ran away from home because I said, if I go back, my father's going to send me back to school. I broke into my primary school, first level, where I went to school at 5 years of age.
Yes, whereabouts in there?
It's in Drumcondra in Dublin City. So I put my elbow through one of the little Georgian, you know, 12 pane that. My elbow through it. I opened the window and I climbed in, looking for somewhere to shelter for the night. There were aprons, and there were leftover coats, and there was janitors' uniforms, and so I piled all them in the corner of the floor, and I slept there for my rape occurred on a Friday. We had been to see the head brother on Thursday, myself and my father. The head brother wanted to hear my side of the story. My father wanted the head brother to hear his side of the story, the Catholic side, shall we say. And I'm not denigrating Catholicism or anybody who has an attachment to a religion that is, you know, it's a beautiful religion, and all religions are beautiful religions. It's not the religion that's the problem. It's the religion tends to spawn something that can be attached to by predators, like, you know. And the Catholic Church was certainly one. So I went to see the head brother to explain what was happening to me. I was being physically abused. I was being touched up, for want of a better word. It started off as physical abuse. Then the brother started saying to me, I'm going to tan your hide first thing in the morning, so take your pants down. And then it became take down your underwear. And, you know, and then he would put his hand around and be feeling my genitals, make me 11 years of age, like, totally uncomfortable. So I began getting into a state, you know what I mean? Like then not wanting to go to school, being physically sick in the morning, you know. So eventually I said it to my mum, like, this man, you know, he's not a teacher. He's there for a different reason. And it was one particular brother. It wasn't the whole school. And I had rheumatic fever and scarlet fever before in the summertime, so I was weak. I was the youngest person in the class because I had skipped a year in primary school. I was 11 years of age. I was totally innocent. Like in the 1960s, kids didn't have sex education and anything. Like, they were told you were born under a cabbage. Like, you know, this sort of nonsense. So none of us knew what was going on. So I ran away from home. As I said, I slept in my old primary school 2 nights. And then on the Sunday night, I said to myself, I can't come in here tonight because I don't know who's going to turn up first in the morning or what time. There's somebody to come in to turn up the heat at 4 o'clock in the morning, or, you know, I can't do that. So I slept in a tree. There was a field behind the house, St. Patrick's Training College for primary school teachers. And around the sports field was probably a 3 to 5 meter wide strip of trees all the way up, on two sides. And one of them was like a Christmas tree, for want of a better word, a very low, hugging the ground fir tree. So I said, I'm going to climb in under that and sleep in there. And I remember it was probably 5 o'clock in the evening, on the 15th of December in 1963. And I remember wrapping myself around the trunk of this tree because the tree would insulate me from the cold. But I was getting colder and colder, and I was crying, and I was really upset, and so I was totally uncomfortable. I needed a wash, I needed a feed, I needed liquid. And I was trying to sleep, and eventually I went into coma, I suppose, rather, of cold. And I remember rising above my body and seeing the body of this young kid under a tree and just floating in space and saying, like, nobody told me about this bit. Like, what am I supposed to do now? You know, because nobody told me what dying was, or how people died, or it was their recovery from death. And then all of a sudden, this was probably maybe midnight. So about 8 o'clock or thereabouts, as the sun rose up, it was like all the snow and the ice just melted instantaneously, which of course it didn't. But like, I was totally in spirit at that time, and I was, okay, this is my way of coming back to life. I need the sun to warm me up now. Yeah. So over a period of hours, I remember just wiggling my fingers and my toes and gradually, you know, getting the blood circulating bit by bit by bit, and trying to stand up. Even to stand up was incredibly painful. My arms wouldn't work, my legs wouldn't work. But eventually, after a couple of hours, I suppose, I said to myself, hey, I think we'll survive that, you know what I mean? And I said, I know one thing, I have to go home. If I do this for another night, I'm dead, you know what I mean? You know, it was my one chance of surviving, you know. And I went to the utter limits of surviving. I went out of my body and I went back into my body. And if I try and do this again, I'm not going to survive. I'm 11 years of age. You know what I mean? I hadn't a clue what was happening to me. Yeah. And then, like, my father disowned me. Shortly after Christmas, he sent me to live with his brother, who was my uncle. And my birthday is the 30th of December, so I went into the next year as a 12-year-old. And I was sleeping in my uncle's house. It was a 4-bedroom house, but I wouldn't sleep in a bed. I wouldn't sleep. I was sleeping on this sofa underneath. It's very hard to describe. There was a mural on the wall that was actually Irish tweed that was glued onto the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And the drawings of Tara were like black marker on the tweed. And every tree that was on the hill of Tara was like a little clump of wool. And I was totally fascinated by this. I said, wow, what, like, and then my uncle said, you're getting really attached to this, aren't you? And I said, yeah, but I don't, what is it, Jerry? Like, what is it? Because my uncle's name was Dermot, but Jerome was the English equivalent of Dermot.
You still in Dublin at the time as your uncle?
No, he lived in Shankill and Wicklow, so out of the city.
Yeah.
And he was Chief Appeals Officer for Social Welfare, so he was quite a high-ranking civil servant. And he said to me, we're coming into Bealtaine, we're coming into the time of year where the land heats up. And he said, he was a bachelor, never took time off work. He said, of an awful lot of holidays. So he said, we'll start going to the ancient sites. I'll bring you around and I showed them and see how you feel. So we started going around, and then at 12 years of age, he said, you really need to wash what happened to you out of your system. So when I was 12 years of age, I was brought to this place called Loughcrew by my uncle, and I went through a coming of age ceremony at 12 years of age. And he said, my uncle did the same thing with his uncle when he was 12 years of age. And my granduncle did the same thing when he was 12 years of age with his own father. And that's all I remember. He could have come back.
Generation after generation.
You know, he could have come back. He was talking about my ancestors who drowned their gauges in the well and not ended in Mullingar. I mean, I got the whole unwritten history of Ireland from this man who spent this time studying archaic Gaeilge, going back into books that were written in the 4th and the 5th century, and decoding them and translating them into modern Gaeilge for himself. I don't mean as a study or as a development of the language,
just
for his own purposes.
So just a quick one, because that's there's going to be people who will hear this interview, and like some of the terms that you use might not be familiar. Like maybe people in New Zealand or back in England, but Gaeilge is like the traditional language.
Yeah, the Gaelic language, the language of Ireland. Yeah, and it's in 3 stages. It's archaic Gaeilge, which is the very old form, which, like the Book of Kells and whatever, would have been written in archaic Gaeilge.
Yeah,
it's the first time, by the way, that spaces were put between words.
Interesting.
Because that's why they often refer to Irish people as spacers, because we were the people that put the spaces between the words.
Okay.
Before that, everything was just written ad infinitum, and you either understood or you didn't. You know. So there's archaic Gaeilge, there's middle Gaeilge, and then there's modern Gaeilge, which is very much influenced by the Roman alphabet and by abbreviating words into how they sound rather than how they're spelled. Because, like the old word for, just say for a king in Ireland is Ri, and it's spelled R-I-G-H, or before that it was spelled R-I-G with a dot over the G, and like what the hell was that? And then they do it now. They would write it R-I fada, so it's R-I with a stroke on the I, which elongates the letter, so it's Ri, like pronounced R-E-E. So there's it's quite a difficult language to go back to, and nobody wants to go back, and nobody wants to understand what my uncle told me, like, you know, a long time ago. Like the Gaelic word for fairy. Fairy came into Irish culture in the 1700s with the colonizers of the English, and it's probably all over the world. Fairies in America, in Aotearoa as well. So fairy is a colonizer English for this magical being. And in Ireland, they were called she. They were called a she, the family, the spirits of and there were the Gaelic word she or a she was translated as the dwellers of the tombs. The tombs being the Neolithic cairns. And what it means is that the spirits of the ancestors dwelt in these places, not the mortal beings. They're not tombs. So this was translated as meaning a tomb where the ancestors were buried. And there's not, you know, okay, subsequently there was burials put in. But if you go back 5,000, there's no bodies there from 5,500 years ago. They might start at the year 4 or 4 millennia ago, like, you know. and go on from that. Definitely not for the first 1500 years. They were never used as a tomb.
Originally, what were they for?
Originally, are solar aligned temples that the sun comes into at certain periods of the year. So it would define the eight periods of the Gaelic year. And I don't think a lot of people realise where the words Imbolc, Beltane or Beltane, Lunasa and Sound come from. They're actually aligned periods of the year. So when our ancestors came here from Anatolia through Sardinia, and they were farmers and they had wheat to grow, they needed to grow wheat as their foodstuff, and they needed to breed their cattle for the milk.
Yeah.
And Irish people are about 97% lactose tolerant. They still are one of the highest lactose tolerances in the world, because our DNA is, our goddess Bo, for instance, was the cow goddess, like, you know. So the cow was a sacred animal, and wheat was the main foodstuff, like, you know.
But it's interesting because there's a lot of people wouldn't have no idea that the ancestral peoples of Ireland are from that part of the world.
Yeah. It's Asian Turkey in modern times, so it's the Asian side of Turkey. It's the Fertile Crescent, so it's where the first wild wheats were. I won't use the word genetically modified because it didn't happen, but it probably explains it in a context that modern people could understand. They went from being wild grasses to being cultivated crops. They were modified over a period of centuries, and they became an essential foodstuff, because spelt and emmer wheat have very hard kernels on them. So you could throw them in a corner of a passage chamber and leave them there, and 6 months later come up and dehusk them, and then
you can use it.
Yeah, and use it as to create flour. So that was the basis of it. So the 8 period year. So we're in summer solstice at the moment. Where we were up on the hill yesterday, celebrating summer solstice. Summer solstice and winter solstice were the 2 periods of the year that defined everything else. So the 2 spring and autumn equinox in the Irish context is not the astronomical date. It's halfway between summer solstice and winter solstice, and halfway between winter solstice and summer solstice. And then the ancestors found they couldn't grow wheat then, because spring equinox is too cold you need a warm soil temperature to germinate the crop. Summer solstice was too late, because you need 5 months for the crop to mature before the frost hits it and kills it. So what they did then was they subdivided each category again. So halfway between winter solstice and spring equinox is the festival we know as Imbolc, which comes from the Gaeilge Imma Bulg, in my belly. And halfway between spring equinox and summer solstice is the festival we know as Béal Tinna, and Béal being your mouth and Tinna being fire. So they drove the cattle through the mouth of 2 fires to coat them in smoke. So when they went out into the pasture, the horseflies and the mayflies and the ticks were not, invading their pelt and making them sick, because the milk, of course, was hugely crucial to their survival.
Yeah.
So halfway between summer solstice and autumn equinox is a festival that in modern times is called Lunasa. So Lunasa, the festival of Lu. And Lu was the theoretical foster son of the original Irish harvest goddess, the harvest goddess of the first crop, who was called Taltu. So the original festival was called Éanach Talton, the festival of the harvest goddess Taltu, because all our gods were goddesses, as is quite common in a lot of Indigenous cultures. And then halfway between autumn equinox and winter solstice is the festival known as Samhain, the end of summer, so Samhain in modern terms, which people relate to Halloween. It's not Halloween. Halloween comes from a pagan festival called Aotearoa. It was originally on the 13th of May. It was transferred to the 1st of November when the Irish colonies were in Wales and in Scotland. And they look, how are we going to get rid of this pagan influence is spreading right through the Christian world? If we don't stop it now, it's going to keep spreading. And Samhain was one of them, was probably the most potent festival. So they moved All Hallows. So a Hallow is a saint. So All Hallows, All Saints Day, at the 1st of November to counteract Samhain. And they brought in All Saints Day. So they made it a 2-day festival. So, and then they started with the eve of All Hallows, which was Halloween. So it became a 3-day festival. And this was done to counteract the one day, the one festival that the Gaelic culture has had, that the Irish culture spread.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So in order to get rid of Samhain, because of its potential to, Samhain was all about giving thanks for the crop. It was all about, we have come to the stage now where we can grow wheat. We have created this cycle of continuance where we can create food. Okay. And wheat was planted at the festival of Bealtaine, which was the time that the cows went out into pasture through 2 smoky fires. And then the human couples, and we have to remember in the Neolithic, the women had an average age span of 26, men of 28. So it wasn't a luxury to have children. It was an absolute necessity.
Yeah, it's
because otherwise your entire survival was gone. Yeah, and possibly Carol Keel and Carol Moore and Sligo fell to that because the ground was very wet and very damp and very hard to, whereas over here on the east side of Ireland, we have beautiful, especially in the Boyne Valley where we are now, we're in Loughcrew, and people will probably know Newgrange, Nelson Bell. It's a glacial valley. It's very fertile, always has been. So if you're ever going to grow crops,
it's here.
It's here, you know what I mean? Whether they landed here by accident or by design, probably the first extended fields of wheat were grown here,
Was back then, though, I mean, like a lot of these land masses, when I think obviously New Zealand, where I normally live, and we talked about this earlier about it would have been forested quite densely.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've landed that, on the coast, whereas now it's just fields that are, but one time would have been full of trees. So it would have been quite, not inhospitable, but there would have been some work to do.
Oh yeah.
Before you could start to plant and to grow food.
And if you, that's what I'm talking about, how people think, oh, there's fields everywhere. Why couldn't they grow wheat 6,000 years ago?
It was full of trees.
Yeah, there were trees. And all they had was stone, flint, wood. Stone, flint and wood, where every tool is made of stone or flint or wood. You know what I mean? So even to chop down a massive oak tree with a stone axe probably took, or 3 or 4 axes, because they probably broke half of them, you know what I mean? To actually make a stone axe, you need specific type of stone that's hard enough and yet brittle enough to take a sharpening, and then to hammer into the bowl of an oak tree, or what I mean, incredibly hard timber. So actually to clear the landscape, and then they had the stone, and the boulders and the clay. And they took the stone, they gathered it together, and probably in winter time, when they weren't concentrating on growing their food or minding their cattle, the men would have been out lifting all of these stones up onto the hills to create these passage chamber cairns, which are upright stones that were brown, that layered stone that came out of glacial erratics on the landscape. They hammered wooden wedges into the clefts in the stone. They would have separated lumps of stone that were 4 to 6 inches, so 100 to 150 mil deep, 6 foot high, and they used these as the uprights, what are called orthostat. So stat means stationary, ortho meaning stone. So stationary stone that was upright, connected at the back with loose stone, so it was leaning slightly backward, but it couldn't fall any further back because the stone, and it couldn't fall forward because it would have had to go into an erect position before it fell. But just a couple of degrees made an awful difference. And then over the top of that, they put more flat stones to form the roof of a passage. And then you go into the inside of a passage. So if you're related to a semi-modern church where you walk along where the bride comes along the aisle, and then the male family is probably sitting on the left-hand side, and the bride's family are on the right-hand side, and the priest is up the front. So it's the same, and it was a method of building. So cruciform was, it's called a cruciform, crucifix shape. A left recess, a right recess, and a central recess. And the recess is like a little alcove with a heavy lintel stone over the top. So you had 4 heavy lintel stones over the top. And then on top of that, you built what's called a corbelled roof. So again, large slabs of stone at a slightly upward angle. They were built layer by layer by layer until eventually you got to the top and there's one single capstone on top. And that's the structure. And in a semi-modern church, a medieval church, they copied that. They took them 700 years to figure out how to put a high roof in a church. And why were they, modern churches don't have a high roof, but they were duplicating, it was evolution,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's important to know, because that predates Christianity.
Yeah.
You touched on it before, a lot of these sacred sites in different parts of the Wells, they would have built churches on top of, or evolved the design, almost like, I'm not saying form of oppression in some way, but they've evolved it to their own needs.
Yeah. And most churches of the time faced east as well, so they faced the sunrise, which a lot of the passage chamber turns to.
Yeah.
And you cleanse yourself with water, you bless yourself with water. I don't know what religion you're, I was, as I said, I was brought up Catholic.
Catholic.
Yeah. So you bless yourself with holy water.
Well, the water's like it's like the air when you walk in, the font.
Yeah, and only then they open the door of the church and go in. And if you go back 6,000 years, you went to the cleansing wells that were at the foot of the hills, at the foot of the sacred hills. You performed a cleansing ceremony where you washed your face, your feet, and your hands. You sat down, you gained inner peace, and only then did you walk into the sacred sanctuary. And the holy water in the apse of the church is a duplication of that. You bless yourself, and in blessing yourself, you pause. You don't bless yourself while you're walking. You concentrate on what you're doing. I forget how it goes now, or if there's a prayer to go. And only then do you open the door, and you go into the sacred sanctuary. So it's evolution in so many ways.
Because here in Loughcrew, I mean, it's when I arrived yesterday from, I'd done a pilgrimage to Wales and then come over here. The first thing I did was want to park my car before I went on the hill. There's a well here, outside the megalithic centre, and went through the whole ritual of washing. But do you want to talk a little bit more about why it's important? Because for me, it's it's a form of reverence. I don't want to take it away from religion, but more from an act of creating a state of being able to receive what's going to happen when you entered into these sacred spaces. So expand on that a bit more.
It's a way of interacting in spirit rather than in your mortal form.
Okay.
So you are going into a spiritual sanctuary, which is different to your everyday life. So you're a farmer, you're slicing the neck of a cow so you can have a bit of beef, and you're sharing it with your neighbours, and you're slaughtering your chickens and you're eating the chicken's eggs, and it's all very immortal and hugely necessity. The wheat is exactly the same. You're killing the wheat, to feed yourself. It doesn't mean you're milking the cow to feed yourself. So it's not something that's oppressive. But at the same time, if you want to enter a sacred site, you want to enter it in an elevated position, spiritually. So you sit at a well, you do a little ceremony. The ceremony I taught is in the book. Bless my eyes so I can see the beauty of the world that surrounds me. Bless my ears so I can hear only good from far and near. Bless my mind so I can glean peace, humility, and things serene. Then you go to your legs and bless my legs so I can walk in places where others may well balk. Bless my feet that I might stroll and seek out Mother Nature's soul. bless my toes that I might, that I might, I forget how it goes now because as you know, I'm coming out of chemotherapy, so my brain is addled. But it was a way of focusing yourself on a different aspect of your being. And I know people, certainly the Maori people, are experienced in dealing spiritually with they treat their spirit as a separate part of their entity to their mortal being. Basically, if you're sitting at a well and you're going through this ceremony, you are preparing yourself to go somewhere in spirit rather than you're not physically stomping all over the land. I always say to people, I have condition at the moment, but I would always go in bare feet, and I would lead a walk, and the kids would say, "Why are we walking bare feet?" And I say, "Because we walk with our ancestors, not on them." So if you're going in your hill walking boots and you're stomping all over the land, to me, that is you're walking on your ancestry rather than engaging with them. And I would always say in an Indigenous prayer, like, we welcome the spirits of the land and the spirits of the ancestors to walk with us if they wish to do so. And that comes from Aboriginal Australia. It's a very ancient, but every culture would understand. They would have their own version of that. My version, the Irish version, is gone. If my uncle told me, I don't remember. I was 12 years of age. Like 90% of what he told me went directly over my head. And it was only when I got my, I was married in spirit to a Maori lady from Ngāti Pauiwi there, Kayakatiaki.
Just a quick one, because there'll be people here from New Zealand who would be interested in this story, because it's told in the book, and this is the connection to where the Te Reo Māori is in the book itself, and your connection to the Māori in Aotearoa New Zealand. So like, if you can touch on that, because something else that you started to touch on it, and we'll go back to it a little bit later because I'm following the conversation, is the initiation that you had by your uncle in the cairn at Loughcrew. So we'll come back to that. But yeah, continue the story about the connection to Maoridom.
Okay, so I, from 12 years of age, I would go to a well at 10 o'clock at night. I would sit down, divest myself of the mortal world. Then I'd go through my cleansing ceremony. The ceremony that's in the book is the one that I use. I'm not saying everybody has to follow that, but it is a process of disengaging from the mortal world and engaging with the spirit world of your ancestors, because they're all in spirit. They're not walking around the hills carrying their spear, dressed in their kilt or whatever. They're all in spirit. So in order to engage with spirit, you have to put your spirit form before your mortal. So your mortal form is obviously you're walking in your mortal form, but you're engaging in spirit with all that is around you. And one night I opened my laptop. This is how I met Annie. I opened my laptop and there was this apparition on my laptop, for want of a better word, of an older lady. I couldn't see her eyes. I could see the tip of her nose and her chin. She was in a very dark shawl. I said to myself, like, where did that come from? I hadn't even switched my laptop on. She was on it. And I turned around too. I'd separated from my wife, but I was living in a little unit down the back of the garden. So I was in the house where the internet was. And I said to her, Helen, look, and I turned my laptop around. She said, nothing there. Like, what are you on about? There's nothing there. And I said, oh, okay. I turned on the laptop and full force it came up in the wallpaper of my laptop. And I said to Helen, look, and I turned around, there was nothing there again. Are you
going mad? Yeah.
You taking drugs? And then I turned it back around and I said, Helen, are you watching? And she's back again. And I said, I'm going to turn around real quick. Can you just tell me that this is here? And he went, I turned around real quick. Fucking there. I'm watching Darnation Street, much more important things than what's on your laptop and Coronation Street. So
there was nothing on the screen. You were obviously perceiving it through like
no, I could actually see this form. Okay, and 3 days later, a Maori lady on Facebook put up a photograph of her 4 male tapunas, one on each of the 4 corners of this image, and in the center was the image of this woman that I had seen. And I said, look, geez, that's what I saw on my laptop 3 days ago. Like, you know, and the number 3 is like hugely significant to me, you know, but I wasn't thinking of it that way. So I engaged with the woman. Her name was Aotearoa New. So she was Kaiataki of the Aotearoa. And she was on her life journey. She was going on her life journey, and she was honouring her tapuna by putting their physical representations up and saying, I am going to engage with my ancestors, and these, I'm honouring my male and my female tapuna. And I says, that woman that's on, that's in there, oh, that's my Auntie Key. Don't mess with her. She killed her 5 husbands. And I'm saying, look, I just want to know who was this woman that appeared in my laptop 3 days ago. And because of that, because we engaged and she engaged back, we then became Facebook friends or Messenger friends or whatever. And she was going on her journey, and her journey was given to her by her uncle Pai Cahill. And Pai, I thought I had in my earlier years constant premonition, or I don't know what it was a backwards look rather than a forwards look of this beautiful woman. I came out of somewhere. I was looking for water. I came out and I saw this beautiful young woman in front of me, and I said, "Oh, she's gorgeous. I have to get to know her." Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. The hunter element of the male psyche. But I went in. It turns out what she had seen exactly the same thing in her life. So she had seen the female version, and she said she told me that I came out from beyond the Stone of the Seven Suns at Aotearoa in Brunavonia in County Meath. There's no passage there, or if there is, it hasn't been discovered. It hasn't been opened yet. So what she said to me was, when you came out with the water, I was attracted to you as well. But my father said to me, like, he's an apprentice driller. Like, they have the power of life or death over me. Out of here, woman. You know what I mean? Wow. So I was looking for this woman for all my life. So she went into a cave, and the cave that she was living in was, bats were living in it. So she was cleaning all the bat shit out so she could put her tent up and sleep. So, and then she stripped off and she washed herself. So I saw this beautiful naked form of a young lady in spirit. I was up in my own place, you know, obviously engaging in spirit. I thought she was like an 18-year-old fine thing, you know what I mean? And when I got to Australia, because Annie lived in Sydney, she was a paramedic in Sydney. She was a matron.
So you'd gone there intentionally to meet her in
physical
form? Yeah.
I actually went on her life journey with her, which sounds a bit funny. I sat on the back of her canoe. So her journey was to carry a canoe to the origins of the longest river in South Island, and carry it or row it to the sea. So that was her life journey. She was a sniper. She had her uncle Pai Cahill was a war hero from the Korean War, and then he had been a nurse in the Korean War, and she was a sniper. So the first day she killed a rabbit, and Pai had, like, she look uncle, I can survive. You know, said, no, you're not supposed to be killing. You're supposed to be, you know, take this journey seriously. You're not supposed to be like going in there to wipe out the the local population of rabbits. You know what I mean? So she was on her journey for 3 months, and she basically lived on manuka honey, you know, and I don't know what the natural vegetation is, but the natural
there's a lot of edibles.
Yeah. So without actually killing anything, you know. So, yeah, so I went with her spiritually on her journey. And there was one night she said to me, Lar, you can't come with me for the next couple of hours because I'm going down this set of rapids, like, you know. And I said, oh, so you better get off my canoe. You know what I mean? So I said, okay, I'll leave you be, I'll sleep. And like an hour later, I woke up and I said, there's something going on. Like, what's going on? Like, because we were engaging telepathically in so many ways. We had got to the stage of a spiritual entanglement, you know what I mean?
I understand,
where we were kind of one being split into two.
I understand, yeah.
And she said, Lar, they're after opening the dam behind me, and I'm just after being swept away. My waka's after being overturned. I'm after smashing my head off a rock. My helmet's gone. My collarbone was broken. Left shoulder was dislocated. Her right arm was broken. And she was saying to me, I'm being carried away.
This is telepathically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm just saying goodbye, you know. And I said, no, hang on, like, you know. There's something in your waka that is going to save your life. And she said, Lars, there's only no satellite phone that she was using to communicate with the modern world. A lump of stone in the bottom of a boat. And she said, that's the stone that broke my helmet. And that turned out to be Punammu. I said, no, there's something else in the bottom. She said, oh, hang on, there's a little trap door at the front. So she opened and there was a grappling hook on a rope.
Ah.
Yeah, so I said to her, right, well, when I tell you, throw the rope, you know. And she said, okay. And then I'm saying, how's she going to throw a rope?
Two broken arms, yeah.
Yeah, so I said, it seemed like an eternity, but I was waiting for the right moment, and I was told, now, tell her now. Okay, Eddie, throw the rope now. And she threw the rope. The grappling hook went around the stem of a little sapling. It caught onto the rope, and the rope immediately tautened up. The canoe shot by the tree, and as it went by and the rope tightened up, the canoe slammed into the bank. And as it did so, a hand came down into her hand and lifted her out of the waka. And I said, wow, like, you know, that was a close shave, like, you know.
So this is what you have, this is what you maybe call your imagination, but you would have, this is a real experience.
I mean, Punammu's up there, I have a Punammu, Teonga there, it's there, you know, so.
Just a quickie again, because as you're talking, like, there'll be language that's being used that people might not be familiar with. So Punammu is it's what might be commonly known as jade in like China, but it's a beautiful greenstone, and it's found, I believe, mainly in the South Island and the Iwi. They've got like rights to it, Aotearoa, and it's carved into these beautiful, like ornaments, and
So she got two made, one for herself and one for me. She got the design copyrighted, and so there was only ever two made.
You've got one, yours here.
Yeah, mine is here. Hers went into, I assume, wherever her into the marae on the, you know, or into the Europa on the marae, where her spirit
on the marae,
right. Sorry, yeah, where her body is laid. So
this happened. So this actually happened. This canoe, and you were experiencing it telepathically. This actually happened. Yeah, because people listen to be like, "What did that really happen?" So it really happened.
Yeah, the guy who met her was a Maori man, and he was spiritually married to a Maori lady as well, which at this stage was kind of, it may have been common practice like 100 or 150 years ago. I've never been to Aotearoa. It's one of my dreams is to get there at one stage. This man had got a telepathic message, get to the river. And he had hopped into his Land Rover. He said, I drove over ditches. I drove straight through a field. I smashed through a hedge. I drove straight in an arrow, all the way to the river. He said he jumped out of his Land Rover. He just got to the banks of the river, and he said, as I got to the bank of the river, he said, this canoe just slammed into the back in front of me. And I put my hand down. He said, I was only there 5 seconds. And he said, and this was, they had like a campsite or little cabins
Yeah.
that they rented out to people. But he had just taken off like a bat out of hell.
You just got an inspiration, like tell it, yeah.
Like get there quick,
Go.
And I don't know how that works, None of us know it. None of us know.
But you know what, Lar, at the moment, I mean, it's probably the last thing, maybe 12 months ago, there's a podcast that's come really popular. And it's a slight digression, but I don't just want to mention it. It's called the telepathy tapes.
Yeah.
And they're able to sort of prove now that this communicate. But, Indigenous peoples, I'm reading the text at the moment, that was written about Aboriginal Australians and the connection to source. I want to build on this conversation because when you're connected in a very particular way, I've got to be careful what language you use. When you're connected in a particular way, that this form of communication with your environment is very natural. It's that we've lost this ability.
Yeah.
I believe in the West.
I often say to people, look, I'm 72 years of age. In order for me to work a smartphone, I had to forget about how to use a DVD recorder, how to use a CD player, how to use a VHS recorder, how to use a Betamax recorder, how to use a coin phone. All of that were dumped out of your, what I would, in modern terms, would describe as your random access memory. All this stuff you had to cast out of your system in order to use a smartphone. And if you consider the generations of people that have gone by and by casting, how do I grow wheat? How do I live on an island that I've never been on before?
How do I fit?
Yeah. The things that you have to take on board in order to survive. And in order to take that on board, you divest yourself of certain amount of abilities that you had. I always say there are no disability as in DIS ability. There's only a THIS ability. So all of these people, be they, whatever way we may describe them, as we describe them as mentally ill or they're deficient. They're not deficient. They are a throwback to the society that we have neglected. So they interact with the planet in a totally different way to the way the modern world does. And we consider them mentally deficient because they don't understand, we don't do that anymore, So in many ways, like the more I got involved with me, the more potent this telegraphy or
telepathic connection
became.
Yeah.
I was working 8 hours a day. I was going home, I was having my dinner, and then I was engaging with somebody on the other side of the world that was on a life journey, telepathically, maybe getting 3 hours sleep a night and back in work the next morning. And you can imagine 3 months of this, I was living on my nerves, but I was in a totally different headspace to where I've been at the start of the journey.
I understand. I mean, I've had direct experience of what you're describing. So my partner that I was with at the time, up until recently, is that, I mean, I'd argue she's very tuned in a particular way, and I experienced it as well, where you could label it telepathic, but we knew what was happening. We'd feel each other. A feeling is a big part of it as well, and synchronicities of things that happen, and what's going on, and you start to trust it. You're communicating in a different,
and
it's completely out of context for the belief and society that we live in, but it's very much an integral part and an innate part of who we are, I believe, and especially reading a lot more, spending a lot of time at Maori, reading a lot more about more Indigenous First Nations peoples. This is an ability. So it's fascinating to hear what you're describing.
Yeah, and I think it's, for us in the Western world, it's trauma related. We have to go through a huge trauma
to reconnect.
To reconnect, because in going through the trauma that I went through, where I left this mortal world and I existed as a spirit being for maybe 8 hours or something, I realized that I can actually tap into this. And I said to you, I overdosed on heroin when I was 22 years of age by accident. I wasn't a drug addict by any means, but somebody had brought some over and I said I'd try it. And phew, I was dead in a chair, like, you know what I mean? But I said, oh, this is like what happened to me before. So I can leave my body and let my physical self recover and my spirit won't be impacted by, you know, by the trauma of
the physical body.
Yeah, yeah. So I had already learned to detach from this. And I have, over the years, I have gone through the cleansing ceremony, as I described it, and come to interact in spirit with the ancestors. And I'd go up and I'd lie in one of the cairns or the passage of the cairn. I would stay there for overnight and I would come back down. I'd open my laptop and I'd write a poem and I'd close my laptop. I'd go to sleep. I'd wake up 4 hours later. I'd open my laptop. This poem would be on my laptop. Where did that come from? You know what I mean? Because you were
tuned into something.
And you were tuned into your spirit rather than you're looking at something from your mortal self. Then when you do wake up, you have reconnected to the mortal world. Then, I think I don't know where those words came from, but I kind of remember before I went to sleep, I felt I had to write something down. And, you know, so it is possible. And I know you're saying, and we have spoken about people with mental illness, or psychosis. I'm not saying mental illness, who are temporarily in psychosis. And I think if there was a way of getting them to engage in the same way as I'm talking about, and I know you want to experience as well, and you're a lot younger than me, so hopefully you can carry it on, and Sandy and our friends can carry, a much younger generation can carry it on and help people engage in spirit with their own spiritual self and come to terms with the world sees me as different, but I'm not different. I am just living in spirit at the moment, you know. I have taken some sort of medicine that has thrown me out of my physical body and into my spiritual self. And I really don't know how to get my spiritual self back onto earth. Like, hopefully at some stage, somebody will realize, well, there is a natural way of reconnecting.
And without the trauma.
Yeah, yeah. So the trauma, be they go to, like, as I was saying, a heroin overdose, be they go to overdose on ayahuasca because some lunatic has given them 10 times the amount of ayahuasca than their body is capable of interacting with. And they just leave their body and you can't get them back. You know, maybe by teaching people how to interact in spirit, you can interact in spirit with a medicine without becoming physically detached, or without becoming detached from your physical self.
You know? Yeah, it's interesting because one of the reasons to have this conversation is because, like what you're describing there, there's a whole other piece about the medicine aspect of it, but like because you get a lot of people who've come to you looking for help or for guidance because they're going through some sort of process, whether it's being induced by like a psychedelic or not. There's a lot of, because I'm 47 now, and I remember going back to when I was in my late 20s, I was starting to become more aware of what was going on beyond what had been indoctrinated, if you could say, or conditioned in a particular way in society. And there was no roadmap for me at that particular time. The internet wasn't as well developed. And so it's been a long journey to be able to navigate that. So that's why I feel very fortunate meeting you now. You know, you always get what you need when you need it, but there's a lot of younger people now who are at the age that I was that are going through these transformations. I don't know what's going on, like you talked about evolution before, but there's definitely something happening at a collective scale of people like questioning everything, having spiritual experiences, just really awakening to more than what's happening, like especially in like modern day society. Like you've got the US who bombed Iran like in the last 24 hours. Like it's going through a big shift, systems are collapsing, something's emerging. But what do you feel like, what's happening, like evolutionary, like what's your perspective on that? Because something's clearly happening, and younger people are thirsty for like more.
I think the parameters of life have been extended, and I think the COVID epidemic, which was a worldwide epidemic in inverted commas, because okay, there was an illness there, but the medicine, or for want of a better word, that they pumped into people that I never took, by the way, but I think that has opened people up, or the fact that people were trying to force you to take some untested medicine, just for you to survive something that you're quite. I mean, I had COVID. I was really bad with COVID. Yeah, I had COVID for about 3 months. Like, it really impacted on me.
Yeah.
But I was able to detach myself from and say, like, I'm living with cancer at the moment. To me, I'm not living with cancer. Cancer has attached itself to me, and I don't want it there. It's limiting my ability to interact with the world at the moment. So it's something I have to divest myself of. But I think the parameters went, like, the patriarchal world of Mr. Trump has gone totally one way. And if you look at the world, there's Putin, there's Trump, there's Young-un, there's
Netanyahu.
Like, it's all rabid patriarchy. No, and what we're talking about is rabid matriarchy, because we're getting back in touch with Mother Earth. And we are, when our ancestors lived on the landscape, they didn't have money, they didn't have cars, there was no oil, there was no electricity. They were totally bound up in what was in their little world, and they were attached to Mother Earth by an umbilical cord that they could not cut, or, if they cut the umbilical cord, then they were in trouble. So they were, to all intents and purposes, their feet were attached to the ground. They had to grow everything. They had to build their own shelter. They had to provide it for their families. And their whole world was involved in a cycle that we see here, a 12-month solar cycle that was just continuous. So you had to get through 1 year, and then it was time to start the next year, and then
time. It's a cycle.
It's cyclical.
It's not linear.
Yeah. So yes, from that point of view, that is the way the world is designed to work. Rabid patriarchy, though, as I just spoke there about having to divest ourselves of so many, versions of electronic reality, in order to use a modern phone. When I was born in the 1950s, television was an amazing invention. I remember going to somebody's house because nobody had a television. And I think it was the World Cup. Northern Ireland were in the 1966 World Cup or something. The Late Late Show was on first, and then something else came on. And I was talking on the Late Late Show, and the old woman says, "Shh, they'll hear you."
They can make a date in the TV.
We're talking about Gay Byrne, and you're talking bad about him. Shh, he'll hear you. So from that point of view, wow, the world has changed so much.
Very quickly as well.
Oh, and it's like being on a set of skis without your paddles, and all of a sudden you've just hit the top of a slope and you're getting faster and faster. Like, there doesn't seem to be any thought into how do I stop this? Like, and as you said, like, the rabid patriarchy is incapable of stopping. Well,
there's a couple of things I want to touch on, like the rabid patriarchy, what you describe, how I perceive it, and doing the family constellations work and understanding, like, these intergenerational patterns and behaviours. I mean, you look at Trump, for example, these are wounded men.
Oh yeah.
So they're acting from a wounded place, and it's quite dangerous. But that's a whole other conversation. But when you talk about COVID, I think one of the things that it really enables is because a lot of people got furloughed, and so a lot of people didn't work. All of a sudden, you've got time to think, and you've got the space to reconnect, and all of a sudden, it's like, wow, this.
What am I doing?
What am I doing here? Like, because normally if you've got, like, you've got a family, and you've got 2 kids to feed, go to work, both you and your partner go to work, like, to earn money, to pay for the mortgage. You haven't got time to think, and then you've got like things like TV and entertainment to keep you occupied. You just haven't got a minute to really connect in a general sense to a deeper part of who you are. Whereas I think that offered a window to people who maybe didn't normally get that opportunity to reconnect. And
I think
it's awakening something in them.
Yeah.
That's just a perception, by the way.
Yeah. No. I mean, I would agree with your perception. Like, you know, I think it's a perception that's shared by many people. You know, was there a reason for COVID, or you know, maybe it was the necessary break that was put on because everything just seemed to stop. You know what I mean? And then from that point, certain people went, for want of a better word, went to the left, and certain people went to the right.
Yeah.
And the right is running the world at the moment. And in order to compensate for that, more and more people are moving back into the spirit, or into the spirit realm, or engaging, or consciously trying to engage with it.
Questioning, searching, looking.
Yeah.
It's getting stronger. You know, when I was younger, like it was, I mean, a lot of spaces that I was in where I was seeking these type of things. There was me who would be like in my mid to late 20s, and then there'd be people who were in the 50s.
Yeah.
It was consistent, and it was very rare to find someone else at my age. It was, not saying it was best, but it was hard to find. And, you know, when we look at that, okay, this is another point. So one of the connections to you is I have a lot of reverence and respect for you as an elder. And, you know, we look at more traditional cultures, they've got these rite of passage and initiations within the community where the younger people then get initiated, and then they become older and they carry that wisdom and that knowledge and become elders and then pass it down. In the West, it's a broken tradition. So,
and that's what's wrong. Like,
that's what's wrong. We've lost our connection to our knowledge.
Yeah, you live a false life. We're all living false lives in so many ways, trying to exist in a world that is unnatural. You know what I mean?
Western world, you mean? The Western industrial society. Yeah. Just to be
I mean, I meet many Indigenous elders here. I'm quite lucky.
They've come here to Loughcrew.
Oh yeah, they come here, and people would say, like, engage with this man when you're there, like, you know.
As in yourself.
As in myself, yeah. And I think that's beautiful that so many cultures would have so many different versions of Mother Earth and Father Sky, but at the same time they all think not exactly the same, but they're all existing in the same realm.
Same but different. Yeah, just different language.
Yeah. And like, I went to Cambridge, for instance, 3 years ago, I think. They engaged with Mexicans, Aboriginals. There were no Maori there. And there was one guy from Wales who was identified as a Druid. He was he was an Ovate, so he was studying Druidry in the proper way. There was a Sikh. There was a few different people actually from Europe. There was a Portuguese lady.
Yeah.
You know, very Lithuanian shaman. They were on a different wavelength to everybody else, like, you know. Sorry, just one sec. Yeah.
So they were on a different wavelength to everybody else because, yeah, they're just tuned in a different way. But it's important to note as well, because obviously we can only understand and perceive based on what we take in through our eyes and through our ears. And so, you know, there's a lot of these traditions, these wisdom traditions that are still prevalent all over the world, but we just don't get access to them or to hear them to be able to inform how we should respond in a different way. You know what I mean? I mean, this has been a big part of my work of reconnecting and connecting into these traditions to inform. But it's almost like to go forward, there needs to be a remembering.
Yeah, I always say, in order to take one step forward, you have to take 2 steps backward.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just continue going forward without grounding yourself. You know what I mean? The ceremony I was at in Cambridge was called Kiva. So an underground, or an altar dug into the ground, and where everybody interacts. And everybody on the last day got to say something, share a portion of your wisdom in a way that relates to the modern world. And what I said to them was, for the first 5 years of your life, you learn, and then you're educated. And never confuse the concept of learning with the concept of education, because that's programming.
Yeah.
You are being programmed to behave in a certain,
that's really
to live with society.
That's a really important point to me, is that it's a form of programming.
Yeah, it is programming. Yeah. And there's no two ways about it. Like, archaeologists, I've spoken to archaeologists in a personal way, saying, like a very famous cave archaeologist in Ireland, Marion Dowd, she would go into a cave and she would walk off into a corner and she'd start excavating the ground there. And I say, Marion, how do you know where to go? And she said, oh no, it's my training. I said, no, it's not. Your training can't tell you to go to a certain corner of a certain cave in the middle of nowhere and start digging in the ground. And she said, no, well, my training has given me experience to know this is where I need to start. And I said, well, I don't think you're being truthful. And she says, she started like loosening up. I said, do you get a feeling that you have to start there? And she said, yes, of course, yeah. And I said, what is that feeling? What? Like, to me, I would say, that's me. I know where my ancestors are because I have a direct connection to them. So if I walk into a cave, I'll go into a corner, I'll sit there and I'll be at peace, and I'll pray, and I'll act in spirit in that. And she said, she said, you're probably right. I said, yeah, she said, I said, your archaeological training is teaching you how to go through the layers of the soil, but it can tell you where somebody's remains was put into the ground 12,000 years ago.
Yeah. I understand. It's again, same but different. But my best friend, he's a detective chief inspector in Merseyside Police. I love sitting down and listening to him, because he obviously has his training about you look for information, but like when he won't openly maybe admit this, but like you can clearly see that. I was like, okay, well, how do you know? Like what you just said, like, do you get a feeling? He said, it's just like, it's like an intuition. It's like a sixth sense. Like, you've got your training, he said, but you'll start to pick up on things and you'll get like he called it a hunch.
Yeah.
And he said, you just know.
And in many ways, that's the same thing as interacting with spirit,
Yeah. It's a feeling, which is feminine.
Yeah. You're going through a process, and by going through the process, you are evolving that process to suit you. Next time you go, you don't have to start at the very beginning. You can start at stage 5 and then eventually you're at stage 10 when you're beginning to interact. Like you're now projecting yourself telepathically, whereas before you were saying, oh, I remember dreaming about this, and you're not relating it to spirit or to the spiritual world or to the world as it has evolved. So you become more attuned, and that's the classic example. But both examples are classic examples of people beginning to engage in spirit of what they're doing and understand.
100%. So it's still there. So even though he's a police officer or she's an archaeologist, it's getting him to a certain place, but from maybe a more traditional sense.
Yeah.
Look, I'm just conscious of the time and just very respectful of obviously where you are.
Yeah.
So I think I want to bring this to a close. It feels like it's all feelings. It's naturally coming to a conclusion. So I just want to say thank you so much. It's been intriguing. There's been loads of different threads, and I'm just conscious of the time that it could have took us off in all kinds of different directions. But it's important, like, for people who are listening to this, I encourage you to find out where your ancestors are from and the sacred spaces that are around that you can reconnect back into. I mean, there's abundance of them, like not just in Ireland, but like in England, like Wales, Scotland, like there's some rich places and to go and connect into them. Like, I've been very fortunate to be to find Loughcrew and to be connected to you. And I've had some experiences here, myself, so I encourage people to come and visit.
Yeah.
Just come and see how, like you said to me, feel what it's like.
Yeah.
And you feel something awakens, like it's been an integral part of my work.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's a need, not a want.
Yeah.
To see out these spaces. So is there any final words that you want to share?
I'll just share one thing, if I may. Like Aho, who gave me my Maori name, culture. About around 2014, 2015, he was really ill. He had said to Annie that I'm really feeling exhausted because I seem to be giving energy all the time, and I'm not. There's nobody giving me energy back. It
wasn't reciprocal.
Yeah, it wasn't reciprocal. So he said, I'm really being. When I was a younger man, I was able to do that, But he said, as I'm getting older, it's becoming more of a drain down of my physical and spiritual energy. So I was sitting somewhere at it's immaterial, and I got this feeling that something was really wrong, and I started saying, like, there's something wrong somewhere. I don't know what it is, but I can feel it really powerfully. And then I started saying, like, how am I feeling it so powerfully? I said, it has to be one of two people. It has to be either Pi or Annie. And then I remember Annie saying, Pi was really exhausted. Like he was, I said, it's Pi, Pi, this hugely sacred war veteran, he's not well. So I rang Annie, who was in Sydney. I said, Annie, can you get somebody to check up on Pi, because I don't think he's very well. And she said, oh yeah, okay. So she rang Aotearoa. She rang her auntie Ripika. Ripika went and she said, oh, he's sitting in his car, he's fine. Like, I said, okay, it must be something else then, like, because I'm doubting my own ability.
Yeah.
You doubt.
It's an unusual thing to experience, to explain to someone else, like, you're off your head, like, what's going on?
Yeah, and then like half an hour later, I was, my whole body was shaking. Like, it was like, will you listen to me? I'm not well, will you get somebody here? Like, and I said to Annie, I rang her again. I said, Annie, please, would you get somebody to physically check on the man, because he's not well. And Ripika trained as a nurse, as Annie did. So Ripika went back over to the car, opened the door, there was no response, felt his neck pulse, a very weak pulse, nearly not there. So she rang an ambulance, and the ambulance came after about 10, 15 minutes or whatever. And they examined them and they put the cardiograph on, and they said, look, I'm sorry, look, if we'd got here 20 minutes earlier, we would have defibbed them, we would have brought,
saved them.
Yeah, saved him. He said he's probably, he's going to pass before we can get to the hospital even. There's nothing we can do right now. So he passed on the way to hospital. And then people were saying, like we've practiced Maori spirituality all our life. We're all telepathically engaging with one another, and yet some idiot from the other side of the world is telling us that our Kamadua is dying. Like, how does that work? And I says, well, I don't know, like, I honestly don't know. And about 3 months later, so Pi had arranged for us to inherit his house when he passed, if myself and Annie got married in the mortal world rather than just spiritually. And I said, look, I'm sorry, I can't. So Pi then gave me the journey. So the book that we're talking about, Out of Darkness, and Why There's a Maori Heading at the beginning of it, it was a life journey I was given to by my Kamadua, even though I identify as Irish, but I'm a member of the human race. I don't specifically, break it into, I see it two ways. You're either attached to the Indigenous world, or you're attached to the modern insanity, that I don't want anything to do with.
Yeah.
So about 3 months later, and he said to me, we're looking for Pi's whakapapa. I've seen it many times, so I know it exists, but we can't find it. And I said, like, what do you want me? What do you want me to do about it? I said, no, if anybody knows where it is, it's you. And I was saying, like, how do I know where his whakapapa is? And he, like, think logically here. Like, I've never been to Aotearoa. I've never met Pi in the mortal world. I've never even seen the man. I said, you put a photograph of him up once on the line. I hadn't a clue what he was, because I never engaged with in the physical realm. I engage with this man in spirit, and his physical entity has nothing got to do with his spiritual self.
But just a quickie, like Whakapapa is the ancestral lineage of, I mean, it goes back to the original Waka that landed in Aotearoa, but like, just so people know what the Whakapapa is, someone's ancestral lineage. So
so it would be a written, not a diary, not exactly a diary, probably a journal if we consider Western world, people that write a journal. The important parts of their life, not a daily diary. So she said it's really important because he was our Kaumatua, and all the meetings that he had gone to with in relation to all the other iwis, they're all detailed in his Whakapapa. And then they had a Whakapapa that were going back to the early 1400s. In her care, and Teonga, like black pearl necklaces, white pearl necklaces, genuine pearls, not like cultivated pearls. Massive gold rings that were worth, geez, I don't know. In the physical world, they were worth an awful lot of money. But they were a connection between the different generations of her iwi. This belonged to my great, this belonged to, So the Whakapapa anyway, she said to me there, you know where it is. Sorry, come on. I said, where is it? And she said, look at me. I said, I know, I can feel the man was very studious. He would have been very like my Uncle Jerry that I engaged with. I said, so he had he had a library or somewhere. Oh, she said, yeah. She said, but we've gone through every book there. He stripped down this house and got it replastered and refloored and re-roofed and everything for us to live in. If you
married, but you didn't.
And I said, okay. And she said, so she started haranguing me. Like I said, no, it's not in the house. Where else would it be? I said, I know he grew plants, and because you told me this over and over again. Has he got a glass house? Yeah. We've taken up the floor of the glass house. We've done it. And I said, and hey, look, I don't even know what you're looking at. I can't picture where you are, So I said, I can't help you, I'm sorry. And then she started getting nasty, like, tell me where it is. And I'm reacting to this like, so can't you expect me to know, So eventually she said, where's the fucking Papa? And I said, it's under this fucking tree. And she said, what? And I said,
it just come out, Stephen.
I don't know where that came from, And she said, which tree? And I said, an A place. After the Korean War, Pi went on a 4-year journey around the world. He went to Machu Picchu, he went to Egypt, he went to Ireland, he went to Stonehenge, he went to all these places. And everywhere he went, he collected seeds. And he brought them back and he grew trees, so there's trees everywhere. Like, it's 1,000 acres of trees. Which tree are you talking about? And I said, I don't know, the tree, the special tree. And she said, oh, she said. So she went off and she said, half an hour later, she physically rang me and she said, we found this Whakapapa. It was in a metal bit. Remember the Jacob's
biscuit tin?
The tin biscuit tin. Said the biscuit tin is nearly rusted away. She said the cover of the book is beginning to be infested with mold, and the first pages on the bottom and on the top are deteriorating,
But the rest of it's intact.
She said. So she said if that had been in the ground, in the biscuit tin for another 3 months,
gone.
It was gone. It was mush, So she said, thank you for that. I said, oh, thank Pi, don't be thanking me, I'm just a channel. So I said, you don't mind me asking you, what tree was it? And she said to me, well, when Pi was in the British Isles, he went to Tara, because they're one of their genealogical names is Pokaitara. which is detailed in the book. So Pokai Tara means encompassing or surrounding Tara. So he took 7 hawberries off the fairy tree, like the spirit tree in Tara, and he brought them home. And he planted all the seeds, and only 2 of them grew. Said one of them only grew for about 6 months and then died, but the other one was grown into a full tree. And the full tree, when we dug in under the tree, that's where the biscuit box was. And like, it's just amazing from my point of view of a man that had picked berries there 30 years before and gone back to Aotearoa, from a site that I engaged with for 25 years.
It's fascinating how the connection.
Yeah, the tree that I had put my forward to and held my forward to this tree for years to ask for permission to enter the site. It's actually the tree that is Whakapapa. Well, the seeds of it, had grown in Aotearoa, and that's where it
was.
Like,
it's remarkable, hey?
It's
you can't really explain that in logical, rational terms.
No, you can't. No, it's just pure spirit. It's engaging in spirit, like, you know what I mean. Like, as I said, my 2 Tianga are there. One of them is Punamu, which I explained, the lump of stone. And he went to her cousin who was a carver and said, because it's pure green, like, apparently Punamu was nearly white at this stage, like, there's veins of different colours in. It's pure green, and she gave the man the piece of Punamu and said, if you take 2 slivers off it and carve 2 things of this, your payment is the rest of the Punamu. And my other one is actually whalebone. It's a small little whalebone, pikuru. And when Annie finished her life journey and got to the sea, when the very time that her canoe connected with the sea, there was 9 pilot whales washed up on the beach. 8 of them, they got back into the water and they survived. They went off. The other part, and of course, the pilot whale is hugely sacred to Maori. So the other one, they had a cremation ceremony, and everybody that was at the ceremony got a piece of bone.
It's very sacred. There's a whole process and protocol to go through with a whale.
Yeah. So my little pikuru was from the bones of the whale, so they're hugely sacred to me. Like that, I don't wear them all the time because I actually had them. I've a drawer unit here, and when I push the drawer without looking, I kind of crack both of them. So I'm just wary of the fact that they'll break if I'm wearing them too much. I do wear them if I'm doing a well blessing, which I'm going to do for you tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, or tonight, probably at this stage. Before you go to the cairns, I wear them then because I do the ceremony that my uncle taught me, and then out of respect for my Maori heritage, I would ask them to do hongi with me, and share the sacred that. So at some stage before you go up the cairns, when it's peaceful and quiet.
It's peaceful and quiet, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Oh no, it's an honour for me, and it's been an honour actually to do this with you as well.
Yeah, well, it's been an incredible honour for me. It's very precious to get time, with someone like yourself. I feel very fortunate in it. Like you look at these, like you just described the story of how that unfolded, like with the connection to Aotearoa New Zealand, and then when I look back, it makes me think about like I'm feeling my own. Almost like it's like when you throw a pebble on the water, it skips to this point now, me and you having this conversation. I suppose then, like, just to finish off, like a lot of some of the story that you've described is in your book, Out of the Darkness.
Yeah.
And so how could people, if they wanted to buy a copy of the book, how would they get it from the Loughcrew Megalithic Centre website, or where could they find?
Well, they can connect directly with me.
Okay.
I didn't print the book to make money, you know what I mean? But I do gift an awful lot of them, and I would ask people to give a donation of €10 for a book, to cover the fact that I've probably, out of 1,500, I've probably given 800 away.
Have you?
You know, and you know, I don't have a problem. There's 6 books sitting on the table in there. Anybody who's here is quite welcome to take a book. I'll sign it for them. I'll put a little personal message on them, and they can take it home. But from the point of view of people wanting to relate to the book, I'm Lar Dooley on Facebook, LARDOOLEY. You can send me a message there, or it's Lawrence with a U, Lawrence Dooley at yahoo.ie. You can send me an email, and I would ask for a donation of €10 plus postage. Like it.
I'll put them details in some of the notes.
Oh, yeah,
I'll do a post and I'll put them details in there. And what I'll do is I'll take a copy and then I'll gift it to someone who listens to the podcast and put in it. So I'll donate a copy. But it's been a real privilege. And,
oh no, it's been a real privilege again, Neil. Thanks. I was looking forward to you coming back.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Lar. All the best.
Okay.
Take care. So thank you to Lar for what was a beautiful and profound interview. And as I said at the end of the podcast, that there's one copy of Lar's book, Out of the Darkness, that I will gift to someone who has listened to this podcast. So if that person is you, or you want it to be you, then send an email to Neil, Neil, at neilmeekin.com, NeilMeekin, and the first person who emails will get the copy of the book. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.